I've always been into art since like a very young age. I've been painting since I've been a kid. I remember like my earliest memories of, I don't know, just nagging my mom to put me in an art class. And I'm pretty much exhausted all the art teachers like around the radius of where I lived. But from there, like it just organically sort of my interest grew, and I landed up like I started formally training for like the art examinations. From there, I was able to take art in school. That happened, and then I knew I wanted to study art further, and I landed up prepping for my portfolio and studied art. So in that sense, it's been a very rocky journey through convincing, art is not a traditional medium which, I don't know, or like a profession which people choose. But with that, like simultaneously, like I knew this was my calling and this is what I wanted to do. So in that sense, like it was organic, but there were like many lumps in how I was able to like keep at it. So, hi, this is Viraj Mithani, and this is the Boheim India story. All my pieces are pretty personal, but I think my portrait of my grandfather was like a very deeply personal piece that I'd created. And I do love portraitures. I studied that as a kid, but I don't know, through moving forward, I don't do them that often. And I think it's pretty personal. I'll do portraitures every once in a while, but it is something that when I deeply feel connected with someone or there's an incident is when that comes out. So I would say my grandfather's portraiture is like the most deeply connected piece that I've produced. I'm really interested in a lot of different painting schools we've had historically in India. I've also grown up learning a lot of these schools and like techniques and unique processes. There's Madhubani, miniature, Varli, Kalighat paintings from Madhya Pradesh. Each region in India has a unique form of art, and I'm really inspired by it. And I think this is like a good example. It has reflections from Madhubani paintings and miniature paintings, but it's also like mashed up with my other influences. And then I also have this particular work, which again you can see where, again, I have a very direct referential sort of moment from a miniature painting, but it also has different moments where things get abstracted, internalized, and it's more through mark making and color. I think one of the things you asked me was, oh, who's the horse and the guy? I was thinking about the story of Chetak and Maharana Pratap, and again, like the whole history and the battle. So they're very subtle references, but in different ways, I think it's important that the history, like historical elements, or there is like this, like popping out of these questions, or like for the viewers and for myself too. Like I'm always learning about different episodes within our history, and in like different ways they sort of like show up in my works. I borrow a lot of motifs and iconography from these schools in hopes to highlight these schools which have never flourished because of colonizations. A lot of these schools have been marginalized, suppressed, oppressed, or are borderline and haven't entered the academia. And in that sense, they've not fully flourished. And I think I'm interested in that line of inquiry, what it means or what would have it meant if these schools had the adequate resources or patronage, and if they would have flourished, like how they would have turned in the contemporary times. So I am interested in that evolution, and through that I feel I'm interested in the heritage, like reviving our own heritage. A lot of my references are pretty direct in the painting, but a lot of times they can be internalized. And in that sense, my work becomes, it plays between objective and objectiveness. But there's definitely a sense of a sense from what I'm drawing from. And in that sense, I hope the viewer takes away thinking about the history. That's one thing I'm always thinking about, whether it's political, whether it's historical, whether it's cultural. So I want the audience to think about the history when they're looking at the paintings, or there's some sort of like it evokes like emotional feelings of perseverance. This one is also another one where, again, a lot of different things are happening, but this particular moment was, I think it's from the Deccan miniature, where the narrative and the didactic become sort of grotesque. You know, like you see the people aren't like normal people, but they're like a bit of devilish with like their teeth, their legs. And yeah, I was like really interested in how the didactic of the miniature shifted from when the school was supposed to be about covering like the king's daily life to like these mythological tales seeped in, and how these monsters and like the darker elements sort of seeped in. So it's pretty fascinating. I think through that, even the like moments like you can see in the corners, very subtle, but through different, there's so much incredible mark making, figuration within our own history of paintings through different schools, that I'm always like really, I don't know, just excited about each time I'm like discovering newer things. So creating art is something that I absolutely enjoy. It's something that I deeply connect with, and it's like the only thing I've known. I love drawing, I love painting, I love creating images like construction. I think since childhood I've been really creative, and in that sense, I've always just like it's come naturally to me to construct or deconstruct an image, and I'm sort of, I feel blessed that I get to wake up and do this every day. Like, how many people can truly go out there and do something they truly love? And in that sense, I feel really blessed that I get to do what I love every day, and I get to have this practice. I think you're always thinking about a lot of ideas you have, and like the world around me, like it really affects me, you know, like things that are happening, like politically, socially, just like the daily, like in the daily routine, you know, like things around you affect you. And I think the art becomes sort of like a nice outlet for me to be expressive. You know, I feel I'm really opinionated on things, and a lot of times, I don't know, like through family, and like my sister will always complain, like, why are you always complaining? So in those moments, I feel art really becomes like a very meaningful, elevated, sort of like a source or a medium that I can have those conversations, not necessarily aloud or like outside, but within myself. And like, I don't know, it acts like a lot of different things. It acts like a conduit to have those conversations. It acts like a healing sort of tool at times. Sometimes it's like you want to get your outrage, like a rage out. So in different ways, I feel like it becomes like a solid outlet for me to sort of share my intellect, my knowledge, my opinions, my emotions, all of it. I hope the audience get a feeling of preservation, because history has always been really important to me, the events that have happened, and I think they play a huge role in how I'm thinking about the image, the influence, the background. When I talk about like borrowing from a lot of like painting schools, or like even like how through materiality, all of those influences, there is like a sense of preservation and throughout, like through the history, and even through the concurrent times when I'm thinking about the future. I've had a pretty organic journey being an artist since childhood. I've loved painting, and then every opportunity that I got, I've chosen art, whether that's in school, college, or university. And after my graduation, I knew I wanted to have a full time practice. So I've really worked towards that. Um, with my painting practice, obviously, when you graduate, it's difficult to sustain it. So I've had different jobs, but early on, I had a goal in university that everything that I do will be somehow related to art and design because that's something that I've always been interested in. So I love teaching. I also have a graphic designing background and I used to freelance. So I had like multiple gigs, but I think this has always been my sort of primary focus and interest, having the practice. But I think there are times art can be really, I don't know, frustrating in terms of even where your work is going. And I'm talking about like just within the paintings. There can be like a lot of moments of frustrations when you're not fully able to sort of execute the ideas you've had. But at the same time, I think you do see the light in the tunnel if you stick at it. So, yeah. I love criticism, to be honest. I recently just got done with my grad school, and a huge part of being in grad school was having a lot of critiques in different ways, in different settings, with different people. So that's something I'm extremely comfortable with. I love it. I encourage it. I think that's the way artists learn and grow and progress. So it's really important. And that's something I definitely want to have that culture in India too. We don't have a lot of critical thinking within also critical writing. I think that's something not a lot of people do in India, and I think it should be encouraged. And also within the general audiences, not just the arts community. I think they do it, but it's more important if it reaches the general audience, and that would make sense to overall have the criticism, because the artists in the studio or within the group, the peers were always talking about ideas and were always sharing things, but I think it needs to reach the wider audience, and that's when it would really make sense to have those conversations. It takes a while. I think art or any creative industry is really difficult, and it takes a bit to build up. But I think like having different supporting jobs is a way to start out. But I always had a rule for myself early on. In college, I had an administrative job, and I kind of knew in that job I hated the desk and the 9 to 5, and that's just not me. And I think that was like a great learning curve. I'm like really thankful I had that job within like the first semester, like in my freshman year. I'm very thankful for that because that really gave me a very strong sort of understanding of like what I really want for myself in my life. So since then, I've had multiple part-time jobs, but they've always existed within the arts. I've given tours. I have freelanced as a graphic designer. I worked in libraries. Yeah, I've done multiple different roles, but they've always like sort of revolved around art and design. I think the role of an artist in modern India for me would be to really like revive our own cultural heritage and sort of work towards building more awareness. I think in India we do still lack infrastructure, and like arts is one of the fields which is still sort of like very niche and small scale as compared to the industry it can be with the population we have. So there's a lot of groundwork to be done. I think a role of a young artist for me would be to really be active in pushing and making arts accessible in different ways you can through community building. Yes and no. I think on an overall level, I am really attached to everything that I do, everything that I make. I usually also don't discard any of my experiments because they're like, I'll reuse them, I'll collage them, or they'll like prop up in my work in one way or the other. So in that sense, I am really possessive about everything that I create, and I'll save every single piece of paper or like mark that I create. But with saying that, I think when I was younger, you definitely feel you have a strong sense of attachment. But through the years, I think once you like your practice grows, and when you work on the same ideas and you're researching, like there's an evolution within your own practice. I don't think a singular painting sort of becomes that important as like a material object that you want to have, because you have, I feel like, tend to grow into having a much larger practice, and like each work sort of becomes like a small part of a jigsaw puzzle within like the larger spectrum. So each piece is really important, and if it's like it disappears, like it is going to affect you in like monumental ways. But at the same time, I think like you make something and then you let go, because when you let go, I think like there's room for like newer there's room for like newer works to be made. So it's always nice. I mean, I think any artist who would say they're not attached to their works is kind of like partially false. You do want to hang around with your works as much. I have some paintings which I've had them for like many years, and maybe they're like not resolved yet. Maybe I'm just like not ready to part with. So there is that sense of strong attachment, but I think it's equally important to sort of, I don't know, detach yourself too. I think like once I'm really done with the work and I achieve what I want, I feel I'm happy to let go of that work into the world. And I feel like for me, that's the detachment process. But even with that, there is a strong sense of attachment, because I know once the work enters the world, it does its own thing, and even that sort of like comes back to you in sort of different ways. So yeah, I don't know about blunders, but you definitely have a lot of highs and lows, days of frustration. What do you call the writer's block? I think you also have the artist's block, where I think for days and weeks, you just struggle with creating something or like executing your ideas. And I think that's normal to have. I've had that, I don't know, regularly I have them. They vary with different time ranges, but I think it's pretty normal to have that. But I think the only way to come out of that is you just like stick at it, like you show up every day, you create, and over time something will click, and then you're like moving upward in terms of creation. I think the excitement to come to the studio is really the motivation. I think each morning I am excited to see from the previous night where I've left off the painting. It's like a good gap, like, and I want to come back and see how it's looking or how it's dried up, and like where I can take it from there. So I think it's a very continuous process, and I think it's that excitement of coming back to see the image, or the painting, or like the ongoing, I don't know, works you're doing is, I think, like a very small thing, but that motivates me to come back every morning. One advice I have is really focusing and cultivating a studio practice. That's the most important thing, and then everything else follows. I think every day you should sort of create something which kind of leads on to having a studio practice.